before I waited on the customers.
Hey, and guess what, Marty? That missed the recording, so no one will
Oh,
know. The
good.
secret amongst us.
That's good.
That is like, you ever give a talk? Well, I've given a talk to the wrestling team and have the coach come up afterwards to tell me about the spinach in my teeth, and I'm like, thanks, true friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, lovey. All right. Well, let's kick this off because I'm really aware of people's time and want to just get us cooked here. So let's see. I can find where I was going. No, what do you know? Nope, we're not going to do that. Bear with me. Okay, and we go back. Talk amongst yourselves for a moment. There we go. All right. So here we are. This is a destination check just to make sure that for all of you who just logged on to some Zoom meeting that this kind of sounds like what you were expecting from a title standpoint. So, and I'll talk to this in a little bit, but so I really want to talk today about this. I came up with this word buoyant because I like to think that when we consider how we want to motor on in this world, we can't change the waves, but we can ride them a little bit easier. And one of the things I've been reflecting on lately is I've been talking to people, men and women in this space, and I do find that women have a distinctly different kind of constellation of concerns about how we motor in this world, to the extent that it feels to me, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but that when we live in kind of male-dominated patriarchy societies, it's about kind of armoring up and being strong, and that's how we define resilience. I hear, coming from elite sport, I hear a lot like that, like man up, armor up. And I don't know that first of all, it doesn't really resonate from a psychological or neuroscience perspective, that we try to get harder and it actually makes it less likely that we're going to thrive. But particularly when I listen to the stories of women, it's often about, I'm trying to do so much. I got all these roles going on. If they make this any harder, I'm going to break. And so I want to be considering this from the opposite perspective, this idea of getting a little bit easier, making coping easier, not harder. That makes sense? Nonverbals are awesome. You'll see me wanting you to like nod and smile a lot. So the biggest smile and nodder wins the prize. So just more than you need to know about me, I cut my teeth in sports psychology, first on the left-hand side here as a senior sports psychologist with the Olympic Committee in the US, in one of probably the most devastating career moves ever, to go almost directly from graduate school to that role. And I probably played a good piece of imposter syndrome for a good 6 years. When you go from somebody who doesn't know anything to somebody the sport world is looking up to, just by virtue of the job role I had. And the first conference I went to as a senior sports psychologist for the USOC, I literally didn't leave my hotel room for the first day and a half because I was so paralyzed about what people would think about me having the cheek to show up in that role. So all this to be said that if there's any mistake to be made in the grit and performance world, I have cheerfully made it, and I'm happy to be a guide along the way. I am not professing to be perfect in any of this space. So after 14 years with USOC, I was burned out. I had missed every one of my kids' birthdays because of travel, and I said, no more of this. And the AIS, the Australian Institute of Sport, was minus a head of their performance psychology team. So they started to recruit me because it's a small world in sports psychology, not that I was all that in a slice of cheese or anything. And in 2011, we made the move over to Australia. And for the first worst year of my life, because it turns out that I was being hired to manage a dysfunctional team of sports psychologists. But nobody tells you that at interview. And I guess a tip for all of us is that when you go for a role and they don't introduce you to anyone on the team you're supposed to be leading, that's probably a sign that something's going on. But it didn't even occur to me that that was a thing until I got into it. That eventually came good until it came unraveled 7 years later when the IIS chose in its infinite wisdom to divest itself of a large portion of its sports scientists, thus setting many of us free. And though I thought that was a horrible thing at the time, it ended up being one of the best things because it led me, and Kathy and I know each other in this world of kind of working for ourselves in this space. And I have to say that I never thought I'd like it, but actually being my own boss is kind of cool. The book that we kind of base all this stuff off was a COVID baby, When Grit Is Not Enough. And I won't speak too much to that, but the workshop today and the workshops that I'm promoting in this space around buoyancy are all based on sort of this idea that grit, this passion perseverance combo, where you're pushing hard for long held goals, sometimes isn't always the way to go. And we want to actually become more agile and free rather than gritty and grindy. See it? See how I can talk freely, fill in the space? Love it. So here's the questions that I have. So what I'm seeing a little bit, I've already revealed, is this difference between men and women and how we cope. And I'm curious. I'm going to look at you all in the face here. And I'm curious about how it has been for you guys through COVID, since COVID. Because I feel like I've seen a world think, okay, it's in our rearview mirror and we're going. Now, finally, borders are open, we're cruising, and yet it feels like we're still kind of dragging a little bit. My experience is that there's just kind of a feeling of, whew, I'm just kind of tired. And maybe this is just life. Maybe it's not just a post-COVID thing, but I'm curious. That's kind of how I see it. And so if there's a time to really think about easier coping, I see Jody. Jody, you're lovely. I'm just going to be looking at you and watching the nod. So thank you very much. I'd love, getting back to this, to consider now I'm turning the mirror on you, and I would love to hear from you about what brought you to this and whether or not I know Jody does, but everybody else, you're feeling about what it's like right now and what attracted you, other than the fact that some of you are just dear friends and came because you love me very much, which is lovely. What brought you to this thing?
I'll start.
I don't know if my microphone's working very well. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, good, because my setup here is not so good. I came across this actually on LinkedIn. I'm connected with Dr. Samantha McLeod in Australia, but I'm actually an Australian psychologist and I'm based in Germany at the moment, so it's 10 past 11 here at night. And I came more from the perspective of, I guess, thinking about where I'm at with my career and my life, and feeling like, oh, okay, we've lost the host.
Yeah, she froze, so maybe she's jumping back on.
Yeah, you can do you want to wait until she gets back or just keep going?
Since she wants to.
Jody, please tell us again where you're calling from in Germany, you said?
Yeah, I'm in Hamburg in Germany, right up the north near Denmark. So I've been living
Sorry
here for a
about
number
that,
of
guys.
years.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, welcome back.
I love Zoom calls.
Ooh, I don't know. I'm sorry. This connection is. Can you guys hear me?
We can, yes. Oh, she's frozen again. No wonder she's not responding. I was like, yes. Okay. You're on slow
Try
mode.
this. Sorry, this is like really crazy.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so I am Not sure what's happening.
I can hear you.
Can you hear us?
Stay with me.
She can't. Yeah, she can't hear us.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So Katie, I'd
Yes.
love to hear from you. Let's just get this started. Tell me what brought you to this. What made you think this was a great idea to spend a perfectly good hour of your life?
Very, very happy to jump in a second. Jody
No, I
had,
can't hear you.
oh,
Can somebody else try talking?
Jody, do you want to jump in again?
Yes, I was talking when we got
This
cut
is
off. Can
such
you
an
hear me?
interesting experience. Can anybody else try talking? No, I can't hear. Oh, you can hear me?
Jody, I can hear
Oh,
you,
that's good to
and
know.
Katie
Okay.
and Kirsten.
Kathy, can you try talking?
I'm talking.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear me. I
no.
can hear you.
This is beautiful. That is so good. This is so good. This is a really
Log
interesting
out and jump off
experience.
again.
Well, how about putting in the chat, if you don't mind? So just putting in the chat, what's one reason you thought this might be of interest to you? And then I'll keep talking. Just let me know, because I'd love to hear from you. Okay. I'll take a minute and let's see what we got. And anybody can just chirp periodically and see if we don't get some sound back. So Liz, just start singing, and that way I can, and I'll. All right. So Kathy made a suggestion that I log off and come on again. So can I do that without? I'm gonna have to end the meeting, and you're gonna have to all log back in, or just?
No, you can do it. You can do it without. You can do it.
Yes, Jody, I hear you. Okay, don't end the meeting. All right, so I am just going
Just
to
leave the meeting. Can you hear me now?
So I just end me. Is that how I do
Yeah,
it?
leave the meeting.
You've got options.
Do not end it.
A leave meeting. Gotcha.
I'm texting her on the side, guys. That's why she's just giving her. I said to leave the meeting and not end it, and yeah. So hopefully she's able to do that and come right back. Sometimes with Zoom, you just never know, right? It happens, and then
An absolute crapshoot.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Model
I'm
stop.
sorry, is it
Oh
Kathy
my
or
goodness,
Kathy?
it did not work.
I'm Kathy.
And
So
y-
That is
and
so
where are you?
interesting. All right, let's
Where
go
are
to the
you
chat.
joining from?
I'm joining
we're
from
gonna have to. We may
Atlanta,
have
from the
just have to
US.
use chat, and I'm sorry. Now
Atlanta,
I've lost
Georgia.
all my chats. This is just awesome. But you guys can still hear me, right?
Yep.
Okay. Let me check my.
So that means like we can talk about her because she can't hear us.
She can't
But
hear
everybody
her.
else gets the
Speaker,
the
phone.
jokes, right?
Switch to phone audio settings. Is there anything? that I
Angela,
can-
you look like you're not
output
typing. Where are you
volume?
calling in from?
Hi, I'm in Melbourne, Australia.
Okay, I got it.
Okay.
Yep, I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
We hear
can
you.
us? Can you hear us?
I just went to my audio settings, and for whatever reason, it just all was turned down. So now we're back.
Awesome. Okay.
Wow, that was floating on the waves of change. All right, so we're just looking. So we can see that. Oh, I love what Angela put down here, that this idea of kind of creating different ways to build relationships. And that is one of the things that Australia actually just did a report with elite women coaches, not that there are many, but women in the sports system. And one of the things that really differentiated men and women in elite sport is this need for social connection. So I really love what you wrote, Angela, because I think that speaks to something that there is, neuroscience evidence to suggest that our brains are wired for connection in ways that men aren't. And so I think you're onto something there, and especially in a virtual world. Okay, Katie. So elite sport taught me is hard work, and it's coming. Yes, I hear you. What a great, I don't know if you guys can see what Katie wrote there, but this idea that there's a swing back to high performance, which is disregarding well-being. And I certainly, that a part of in my world in elite sport, I have more than once heard from coaches as a sports psychologist, hey, KP, I break them, you fix them. And like, if there's a less durable way to get through high performance, that would be it. And so really appreciating that idea that I'd like for us to be able to, if there's a legacy to leave in this world, it's figuring out how to do high performance and have well-being. And I could see Katie's like, fuck yeah, it's good. So I'm a sweary sports psychologist. You should know that about me.
Such salty language.
Salty, especially because it's only 8:20 here in Australia. So
That's pretty early in the day to be having careful grammar.
yeah, I know. My
Vocabulary.
filter, I haven't had to put my filter on yet, Marty. Thank you very much for that.
Exactly.
All
That's all right, sweetheart. As long as you don't put an apostrophe in the possessive it's, you'll be fine.
I actually have a book called Fucking Apostrophes because it's like, it just takes the piss out of that particular part of punctuation. All right. And I'm sorry, I lost some of the chat beforehand. Now, Jody, I think it was you that would talk to something. Do you want to say out loud, since now we can talk about what brings you here? Do you mind? Oh, I know. I got to talk.
No, that's a no. I was prattling on about some things. I'm an Australian psychologist, but I'm based here in Hamburg, Germany, and was here living through COVID and the very extended, harsh lockdowns. So Germany was one of the harshest countries in Europe, and Hamburg was one of the harshest states. So it was a very difficult time. So definitely feeling that post-COVID kind of lag. And I guess from a personal perspective, feeling like, yeah, juggling it all, pushing hard, doing all those things you talked about with the, probably taking on too much, and yeah, just interested in hearing your perspective about the things that you're going to be focusing on today.
All right. Thank you. Well, I appreciate the shares because I think, the more that we know about, and it sounds like there's a common theme here of this being an issue. And I'm glad, but I'm sad. You know what I mean? Because we'd like to be in a world where these things weren't so prevalent. All right. Let's see if we can just cruise through the next few without. So I want to just speak briefly to when I think about this idea of a performance, kind of a buoyant mindset or becoming more buoyant. There are a couple of things that come to mind for me. And one is this idea of, and I conceive of resilience as a mindset, not behavior. So though people will say they're acting, you can see resilience through action, I talk about it in terms of a particular kind of mindset that allows us to act in certain ways so that we can ride the waves. And I think a big thing that makes these kinds of concepts hard is that they are invisible. So it happens that resilience is only seen through behavior, but I'll argue that it's inside first and then we express it. Then this idea of, I call it appropriate grit, because clearly I come from a place, and I don't know about any of you, but like elite sport where I come from, everybody's gritty. And so I didn't really realize what that meant until I kind of watched my kid grow up in sport and realized that there are some people in the world who don't know what effort means. But when you marinate it and everybody's gritting harder and harder, that's often where things fall apart. So this idea of appropriate grit, how do we sort of measure out the effort that we want to make? And I would argue, let's make the least amount of effort for what we have to do. Let's not over grit. Let's make it as easy as possible. Then we have this idea, and rather than sort of a myopic straight on focus, that we want to be able to see and change at will. Like, how do we pivot? And do we do that well? And that certainly was one of the basis of my book, because I realized there were some coaches in particular who I thought were really gritty, but then when the Olympics fell apart in 2020 and it was pushed back a year, were training athletes exactly the same way and weren't able to pivot, weren't able to see what was going on. And infamously, one of our national teams shed 25% of its squad that year because athletes were just, what the F? This is not how we need to be treated. And then finally, and maybe shouldn't go last, but this idea that we have to have this great awareness, this wide angle view on what's coming, what's happening, but without too much reactivity around it. So I think about keeping our eye on the weather, needing to process when the winds change, riding the waves. I'm milking the water analogy for all it's worth. And any questions about this? So these are kind of the ingredients that I see going in. Okay. So here's the thing. Now, again, I think about this relationship between grit and resilience and not being as easy as you might think. So if grit is what effort looks like on the outside and resilience is about the mindset, what I see is this idea, and I'll get into it, that we can be on the end of low grit and low resilience, where we're just not able to motor up much effort at all. And then we kind of come through, and as we grow both of them, we get to this place where we're operating all right. But chronic overgritting, that grind behavior actually kills our resilience. So you see where I'm going here. You're going to see a graph in a moment. So we are looking at this idea of being able to sit in the sweet spot at the top. So there you go. This is what we're talking about. And what we want to be able to do is sit here for a longer period of time and avoid this time when we are not doing either. And we're going to actually get you to assess yourselves on whether you sit sometimes here, and why, and what are the things that allow us to be in the sweet zone. Does that make sense? Nods are good, but if you don't make a sense, like get a hand up and give a yell or okay. Oh, Liz, beautiful. Bobblehead Liz Mino has got it going on. Thank you very much. All right. So let me just start. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present 5 slides. And on each of them are 2 questions. And I'm going to ask you to read the question and keep score for yourself. And we're going to get to the end and we're going to talk about what we learned about ourselves. All right, so you will need something to write on, something to write with. And let's do this thing. So here's where we're going to find out. So here's.
Nobody said there'd be math, KP.
What's that?
Nobody said there'd be math, KP.
That's true. Not much math, but let me just read. So I'll read the questions and I just don't take too long to think about them. So when faced with a challenging long-term goal, do you often give up or lose interest when you encounter setbacks? Do you stay committed and keep working despite obstacles? Do you push yourself to the point that it impacts your well-being? Number 2, how do you handle failures or setbacks in your life? I tend to view them as signs to abandon my goals. I see them as opportunities to learn and grow stronger. I tend to dwell on past failures as a way to whip myself into more effort. All right. Hand up if you need more time, but I'm going to keep going. When setting a new goal, this is number 3. I prefer goals that are easily achievable and require minimal effort. I set ambitious but realistic goals that challenge me in a healthy way. Or I like to set hard goals that may be unrealistic and stressful. Number 4, how do you approach your daily tasks and responsibilities? I often procrastinate or avoid tasks that require effort. I tackle tasks with determination and a sense of purpose. Or I overcommit to tasks and become overwhelmed. Now, don't think too hard about all of this. I just would kind of want to see where we're sitting. Halfway there, number 5, when you're passionate about a project or hobby, do you A, talk yourself out of it if it becomes too challenging or time consuming? B, invest time and effort to improve and excel in that area? Or C, sacrifice other important aspects of your life to pursue your passion? 6, how do you react when you're not immediately good at something new? A, I get discouraged and give up because I'm not a natural talent. B, I embrace the learning process and I keep practicing to improve. C, push myself hard, determined to succeed no matter what. Kind of see a theme here, right? 7, when you face a major life decision, do you A, often avoid making a decision and hope things will work out on their own? B, weigh the options, choose thoughtfully, and take action? C, obsessively ruminate over the decision and struggle to move forward? 8, how do you handle stress and pressure in your life? A, tend to become overwhelmed and lose focus. B, I stay composed and work through stressful situations effectively. C, take on too much and become overly stressed. And finally, 9 and 10, rounding the final turn, folks. Here we go. 9, when you encounter criticism or negative feedback, do you A, take it personally and feel demotivated? B, use it as constructive feedback to improve? Or C, react defensively and dismiss or deflect it? And finally, how would you describe your work-life balance? I prioritize the good times now over longer-term career or personal goals. B, strive to balance focus on myself, my passions, and my responsibilities. Or C, sacrifice personal well-being and relationships for goals or career success. Whew. Yes. So this is the personal involvement portion of this program, folks. So not surprisingly, you may have seen a theme here. So A response is a tendency toward lower grit and resilience and a potentially lower ability to manage stress and challenge. B, we're talking perhaps in the grit and resilience sweet spot. And C, and this is my letter completely, I own it right now, I am in the C zone, so it suggests a tendency toward overgritting, a risk of lowered resilience and burnout. So my question, where did you land? So this is me. I'll own it. Anybody want to speak into what came up for them?
I'm in between. I'm going up the hill between A and B. And it all just depends on what the scenario is, how big the stressor is. And I'm already maxed out. So
yeah,
is an option.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Yeah, so it's like I can't even get to C, which I'm not saying having been there, I don't recommend it, but I really want to appreciate that idea that I'm sitting just sometimes. And do you know anything about the scenarios, Liz, that kind of differentiate when you're able to, what do you? Because I think there is some truth here that it's not an all one letter, but it's good to know what are the things that might lead us.
Yeah, I just looking at all of them, I think there was a gradation that could be applied, but definitely 8. It just depends on the level of stressors. And number 9, well, how do you take feedback? Well, feedback is a gift, unless the person giving it to you is an asshole, and then
yeah,
it's not.
Yeah, no, and there's good and bad ways to give feedback, and unintentionally we can blow it. So. Anybody else want to comment into this space? I mean, I'm not trying to add anybody, but I'd be curious.
I'm happy to, Kirsten.
Okay, sorry. All right, we'll go Kathy and then Katie.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I found myself across the range of the whole scale. So I got 5 Bs, 3 B. Oh no, hold on. Okay, 5 B, 3 A's, and 2 C's. I put the wrong letters down. So I was completely across the grid. So in some cases, yeah, I'm on it, and in other cases, I need work and I need help. So across the whole scale, really, and that's probably an accurate reflection of where I am.
But the good news there is, at least the majority, your majority of situations, if I'm making a big leap, that you're hitting, but to own And I think we want to know, this is where awareness comes in. What are the situations that kick us over and when?
Yeah.
And so I totally get it.
Yeah, I think areas where I'm winning, it feels good. And you're like, yeah, I've got this down, but obviously you haven't mastered everything, or, still juggling some balls, and that's where it feels heavy. So, but great insight. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Katie, did you want to speak into this space a little bit, or?
I can. No A's for me, which if I have flashbacks to school is not a good thing.
Well put.
Yeah, a tendency towards C, some B's. But I did a quick, it's probably something to unpack on another scenario, but I often see my life so was an elite athlete, then life since. And so I was kind of thinking through as I was talking, what was I then and what am I now? And so there was a real distinction, a really obvious B's back then, C's now, which is kind of interesting. Now, whether that's kids in the mix, more balls to juggle, resources not around me, et cetera, but it was just an interesting reflection.
Yeah, it is interesting, especially as an elite athlete, to be more in the A space.
More in the B.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Gotcha. All right. Anybody, and there is no obligation. I just, if there was anything anybody wanted to say, because I'm realizing that my technical glitches.
Yeah, I'm happy to say.
Go ahead, Jody.
I got mainly C's. Well, 5 C's, 3 B's, and 1 A.
That does sound like a terrible report card, doesn't it?
Well, it kind of is.
Yeah.
But I can sort of relate a bit to what Katie just said, actually, that I really, for me, it felt like, oh, if I'm thinking about this aspect of my life, I would score it this way. But if I'm thinking about that aspect of my life, I would score it another way. So I think for me, sort of self-care, health and well-being stuff has always been a bit of a weakness for me. So if I think of those domains, it really, I'm not assessing myself very favorably in those. But if I'm thinking about career and academia, and I'm, studying again at the moment and doing those things, it's a very different way that I'm assessing myself in that area.
And I just want to really put a pin on what we're saying here in it, because it can feel like that inventory can be look like a one size fit all thing, but we want to be aware this is more complex than that. And I think, like Kathy said, I think sometimes it's about you're flush with success and you feel really determined, and then sometimes you lose that, or it could be domain specific. So there's nothing easy here in terms of conceptualizing this. But what I'm hearing is that we're all experiencing some sense of sometimes in deficit and sometimes not. And again, it's the awareness to know, and then what are the skills that we need to help ourselves when we can't just do it. And so there are going to be times when it ain't broken, we don't have to fix it, but then other times when we absolutely want some tips and tools. And I guess I would be remiss if I didn't say that the kinds of things I talk about in this space are not, people are like, KP, you're going to hand me a strategy. There'll be some insight here. I think we've just discovered some, but some of this is about practices that help us cultivate qualities of mind that can help us in the long term, but there's not often a quick fix in this space. All right, let's crack on, folks. So kind of we've captured this idea of the A, B, C zone and talked into that, and that it's sometimes we're one or the other, or sometimes across all three, not generally at the same time. So the things that I consider around getting more buoyant is that here are the questions that I'd be wanting to think about. And I think it was Katie who spoke to this. What's my relationship history with grit and hard effort? And I just got interviewed for a research project, and it was in retail. This person made me tell my life story, which is so much fun. It actually was really fun, but I realized, like, fuck, I have spent my whole life gritting. So I'm not like, I never was a B person. I was always a C person. And so I think it's interesting to kind of see how we've been conditioned. And this is my sweet spot as a performance psychologist, is to understand that some of what goes on for us that tips us one way or the other, it could be the asshole boss, but it could also be it could be at the same time, it can be stories that we're telling ourselves that can make life harder than it needs to be. And we all have them, and there's just scripts that run. They say that 90% of the thoughts we think every day are reruns. That's crazy. And so we have these thought loops that can get in the way. And so some of this is about kind of identifying and reworking some of the scripts. And I do find that underneath a lot of our performance, whether it's underperformance or the overcooking, is there's fear involved. Like it might be that I don't grit because I'm afraid of how to get good, the imposter syndrome or whatever. And for me, over gritting was like, if I let up, something bad's going to happen. I'm afraid. And so we just want to understand the role of fear in our lives, and we want to make friends with it rather than fear it, which we don't, because who likes to be in fear state, but to understand that. So one of the ways that I talk about in my book is this 3-step process that to help us really evaluate situations, particularly stressful situations or situations in change. So I talk about sort of uncertainty and change. And you can see that some of this comes right out of the buoyancy mindset. This idea of awareness, watching the weather. I got to know how I'm feeling at any particular moment. And that's number one. And what I'll say to that is I think sometimes when we motor through or we're stressed, we don't even know. And I don't know if anybody can speak to this, but from my perspective, I have been like in this practice for a long time, and there'll be days where I'll just feel flat and I have to kind of stop and go, what is going on, and sit with it to identify that it was from a conversation the day before that I'm still feeling a bit shitty about. And I want to just know, I want to know what the stories are that are going on in my head, or the influences or emotions. So that's number one. And then number two, this is people, high achievers fight this idea of acceptance, but accepting like right now it's like this. We accept reality for what it is. So I'm flat. Maybe I missed a big sale yesterday and I'm feeling really flat, or whatever it is, or we're down in the fourth quarter by 25 points. Because what I like to think about in this space is that when we fight reality, who wins, us or reality? Anybody?
I think acceptance has gotten easier the older I've gotten. Maybe it's a part of, I don't give a shit. I'm tired of it. But acceptance is much to say that right now it's like this is so much easier than it was 10 years ago.
And I guess we can say like, I don't give a shit, but I imagine you also realize that doing the opposite, where to get you? You know, like, and I think like you kind of say, what the hell, but it's because we're worn down by fighting reality. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Liz, but is that sort of some of it?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else want to comment into this space? Feeling it? Okay. And then finally, in the idea here, though, I find that people fight until we finally realize that it's okay, but we fight it because acceptance implies that we have to take it. We're bending over and taking it, or there's some utter passivity or terribleness. And I want to say that I think this is a big part of how we kind of build resilience, is the ability to not, the less we fight, the easier it gets. And then we can take more considered action. All right, so I don't think I'm going to be telling you anything you don't know, but these are the things I see when we don't get this right, and I'm curious. So sometimes it is about the fact that we might be sitting in the A zone not feeling like we can strive, that we get kind of caught in the fear space. I'm afraid. And I do not want to demonize fear. Fear is real. It's a primal experience that we have. And so what we would need to do when we are hobbled is turn and look and befriend it, because fear only goes away when we feel safe. And if we make it unsafe to be afraid, we've just doubled down on a problem. This would be me. I have a note on my, I'll get it just to show you. This was my 2023 word of the year. Enough is enough, because I am this kind of person who would go and go. And I don't know if Angela's still here, because I can't see all of you, but this idea when we work at home, sometimes it's so easy not to stop because there's no getting in the car and driving home. Need I say more? And I'm kind of hearing some of the voices in today as we go. And I'm working with a corporate group right now, and it's a man thing to speak into the room about the thoughts they hold really close to themselves. And one of the thoughts that came out in this recent meeting was, I need to be the smartest person in the room. I just don't tend to hear women saying that, but nevertheless,
Well, if that's the case, you're in the wrong room.
I
You should
said,
be wanting to learn.
and I said, like, oh, so what if you're not? That would mean you'd have to learn. You get to learn from somebody else. But it's interesting when we have, the thoughts that own us limit us. But I think there are sometimes, and so we want to be thinking about the thoughts that we live in. Like, is that what I think? Another person said, I hate to be wrong. And that is one of the leaders in this group. And somebody said, well, it's really hard to even have a discussion with you after you've made a decision, because you hold it so strongly. And so to recognize the kind of beliefs that really have us in their grip. And this is kind of a classic one. What are the emotions that we just don't want to be dealing with? And do we just shove them away, which we kind of know intellectually isn't in our best interest? But we want to be kind of reflecting on the piece that, how this fits in for us, and how these things might be playing into how we are feeling. And then I think about, all right, so we know these things, but what stops us for taking action to help ourselves? And these are the kinds of things that I see, but I'd be curious what you see. I don't know how. I don't know what to do. Sorry, oh, this is kind of a classic. I can't change. And I have people coming to me paying good money to see me as a performance psychologist. And by session 2, they're like, okay, P, this is just how I am. And it's like, you can feel it when you know that you want things to go differently, but then there's just like, sometimes like, fuck that. I don't want to do it. Where do I start? This is a biggie, not enough time. And yet the price we pay when we don't take the time is why we're here. And this is my favorite, because if I'm talking to a group of women in particular, I don't hear men say this. It's all about everybody else. It's not about me. I have to take care of everybody else before I take care of me. And because there's not any time to do that, I never take care of me. So this is an observation zone, not a judgment zone, to the extent that you might be seeing yourself a little bit in all of these. And you're like, we all feel this, so the things that stop us from taking action are real, and we want to be able to face them cheerfully and go, okay, so if that's the case, what do I want to do? If in fact I want to get better in this space. I love when kids come on screen, don't you? I'm just loving it. So cutting to the chase here. So what today has been about is just kind of framing out where I see the landscape of buoyancy going. So what I have put together, and no obligation whatsoever, but what I've put together is this idea of taken a deeper dive into these areas. So I have three workshops coming up over the next few weeks, which take a deep dive into each one of these. So how do we build a resilient mindset? Like what are the ingredients? How do we actually cultivate this idea of awareness? Because it's, you know, the stats say that like 85% of us think we're aware and only 15% of us are, which is kind of hilarious. And so how do we actually work so that we can more quickly recognize when we need what we need? And then finally, what this idea that Liz, you kind of pointed out, the acceptance. How do I cultivate this idea of non-reactivity so that I can get out of my own way when the stress hits? So I'm going to stop and pause here and just see, how does that make sense? Are there any questions on any of this?
No questions for me.
Okay. Thank you, Liz. So the idea here would be, if this is of interest, and there is no obligation, as I said, but if you want to kind of get curious and pursue this, what I want to do is make this, you know, easy to sample. So you can try and go into any one of these if you'd like, but there is a discount if you buy all three, and you can try the first one on your own. And then if you decide to level up and do the second and third one, then you get the bundle price just goes on top. And I hope so this is where math has challenged me. I was trying to make this such that the bundle price should be cheaper than the individual price, but you tell me. And I'd love to have you along for the journey, because I think, you know, it would be, I hope you got something out of the time we've had so far, but if we want to take a deeper dive into this journey, I'd love to have you along. So these workshops are available on Humantix, and if you decide, I know this is like the smallest price ever, but you can register for either one of them and just respond in the chat, or you can email me to let me know you're interested, and I can send you these links. If you kind of are saying, well, I need to kind of have some time to think about it, I want to chat with you, absolutely, we can book in for a no obligation, just let's talk about anything. And I'm not looking that you have to sign up for anything in particular. And certainly I have a bi-weekly newsletter that some of you I think are on. And if you'd like to join, please put yes in the chat box. So with that, these are the ways in which I work. So I do both. So I've mentioned the discovery calls. I do a number of workshops that you can see on my website, including a workshop called High Performance from the Inside Out that goes in even deeper than where we're going today, all around high performance. And that's a 5-session workshop. Or I talk into mental health awareness and action programs. And then finally, I do individual coaching. So that ends my portion of this program, but I'd love to hear just like reflections on the hour that you've spent here. What's a takeaway, or what's one thing that you're going to do or think about differently as a result of our chat? Because sometimes it really, if you say it out loud, it'll be something that will be a little bit more gritty. Thank you, Katie. I got the newsletter. You're in.
No problem. I might share one of my, do you want us to share?
Absolutely. Please.
I can't quite get the words around it, so bear with me. One of the things, there was lots that jumped out, so thank you so much. One of the things that jumped out for me was this idea, I almost felt relief in my shoulders when you said and I've written it down, high achievers fight acceptance. So I feel like I've had this narrative in my mind for like the last number of years since I've understood the importance of accepting things. I didn't even realize until you said it that I was actually going, I need to accept acceptance and this kind of, I don't know. Anyway, so my take is to sit with that and see if I can accept the fact that I'm fighting acceptance. Like, just kind of acknowledge that in there before I try and work out what the next steps might be.
That is, oh my God, so beautiful, because it really captures a lot of the resistance I hear in this space, that people, it's almost like I'm going to lose my edge if I accept. But I've also come around to the word allow feels better to me, because sometimes accept feels like an order. I got to accept this, but can I allow reality to be? So I'm loving, Katie, what you said. It confirms my bias that high achievers struggle in this space. So you're helping me out here. But anybody else want to kind of reflect on anything that came out for them? Go ahead, Marty.
Katie, I absolutely hear what you're saying. Whenever I see this, let it go and you control your thoughts, they don't control you. I just want to say, and the horse you rode in on. Because let it go. That is such bullshit. And Kirsten, I really wish I'd known you. Oh, good God, 40 years ago when I first became a U.S. Air Force officer. And, this was when we were very first allowing women to be fighter pilots. And I was just a unit commander. And this man up, that's all we heard, all we believed. And if it makes any of y'all feel better, it's getting better. We're a long way from that. I wish, Kirsten, that I could refer you to the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy, and I will send him a link, because we're having such issues with mental health in the military services now. The suicide rate is unacceptable. It's just outrageous. And we hear from the junior sailors, the junior troops, that, yeah, you talk a good game, but this is the reality. And I think that, if the senior leadership would understand, there are people who can help you, instead of just saying, yes, this is available. Okay. To actually take some concrete action for those junior sailors. My little Jacob Allison, if you remember him, is now a senior petty officer in the Navy, just deployed with the USS Mercy, which is a hospital ship. And this is his first time being the lead petty officer. And we spend a lot of time talking about, grooming those junior sailors and helping them along the way. But he's one in a million that has somebody that talks about that kind of thing with him. And if we could get the MCPON to buy into this idea, which he may not have, he's never been exposed to it.
You put me in touch. I would be delighted to have a conversation with that, because
I'll do it. His name is Master Chief Honyea, Honyea. So if you see that name in an email, you'll know it's a real person.
Beautiful.
Thank you. It's been really interesting, and my heart goes out to all of you for the struggle, because now I'm on the other side of it, and I'm thinking, oh my God, where was this? When I had 2 babies under age 2, my husband was deployed. I was working on a PhD and working full time, and I belonged to the Air National Guard.
All right, Marty, I want to just make sure we hear from everybody. I'm so loving what you have to say. And the military complex, don't get me started. Anybody else? Any other takeaways? So thank you. Anything else? I'd love to hear from anybody about what you took away.
I think it's okay to be on all levels of that bell-shaped curve.
Yeah. And honey, I could not agree more. Like, we do not want to demonize ourselves. Anywhere we are is good, and it's fine. And it's a question of if what we want to do to lower the struggle in either of those spaces. And I think it's an observation zone, and then you go, okay, there are going to be easier ways to do it, but we have to be good with where we are now to start. That would be a big message.
Yeah, and I like the term buoyancy better than resilience, resilience, I want to say, I have no other option but to do this. It's not that I'm being resilient, it just has to get done.
Yeah.
So buoyancy sounds a little more compassionate.
Awesome. Because I too hate the word resilience, but I feel like people understand it and I put it in there because it draws people. But at the same time, I'm with you. So love that you love it. And I see Jody nodding, my favorite nodder in the crowd. You got anything for me?
Yes. So I really liked the visual of the curve. I hadn't come across that, grit and resilience curve before. I'm not in high performance psychology, but so that wasn't familiar to me. And so for me, it's really just, I guess, from a personal perspective, honing in on, what am I doing to myself?
So I love the word Melissa, compassionate, compassionate in how this is for you, because it's we got to start easy, but
but I almost feel that visual will be a good way of helping me to sort of raise awareness and to cognitively reframe and to really challenge myself when I'm noticing myself in that space and what the motivation is for doing that.
Beautiful. All right. Well, I'm aware of time and I don't want to keep anybody beyond, but I'm happy to stay on for anybody who would like to chat because I have a little bit of time. Angela, we didn't hear much from you. I don't know if there's anything that you want to bring to the table as people. And so if you got to go, please do not worry, just go.
Hi, Kirsten. Good to see you again. It's been a while.
Too.
Yeah, I think this session and reading the book has been really helpful for me because it's just made me more aware. Like sometimes I just get very intense into my work if I have a project, and maybe it comes from an area of potentially just low confidence sometimes. I just think, can I do this project? And I don't look after myself when I'm doing the work, and I don't exercise, I don't sleep well, I drink too much coffee, and so I know doing all those things is making the job harder for me, but I'm becoming more aware of that way that I act, and trying to find some tools to deal with it a bit better.
Well, again, no obligation, but I would be, those tools are where we're going, in terms of these workshops. So if that becomes something you'd like to do. Bye, Katie. Thanks. And so it was so good to see you. It's hard to, like people from my past life that I haven't seen in a while, I just want to have a chat with, but it's like hard in a group, but it was really good to see you again. So where are you now?
I work at BHP in Melbourne, a big mining company. Technically, I'm a contractor. I've been there 3 years, and they extend my contract every 2 months because I actually don't want to be an employee. I think it's easier for my mental health being a contractor and knowing I could sort of leave at short notice if I want to, and it means I don't think too much about the office politics, and it because big organizations like BHP just as or even more bureaucratic than the public service, right? There's so many processes and inefficiencies and things that would frustrate me, but as a contractor I feel slightly more removed, and I do my job the best I can, and I get pleasure out of doing a good job, and but I do sort of feel like at some stage I'm going to have to, or I potentially should go back into the proper workforce and continue my career in a different way, but I don't know, it's working for me now.
Yeah, well, and I would be just examining even the motivation under what you're just saying, like maybe not, maybe. Like it, it's interesting because we just, thoughts pop into our head and we start to give credence to them without even thinking about, is this true? Is this right? It just pops. And not to say it could be right, but maybe this is the path that it makes the most sense for me. And so I always like to watch out for the things that we think that have weight in our head.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think maybe I think that way because to date I have had a very interesting career. I've done some great jobs. You know, I did well at uni. I went into investment banking. I've had some senior roles. I had that great role at the AIS. Doing the role I am now isn't really pushing my career forward. But then I'm actually not sure that's what I want.
Yeah.
So,
And what I would say is that we often devolve into an either or situation in our heads. You know, it's either I do this or I do this other thing. And I would just want to sit with the idea that there might be some, you know, it might be an and, like, can I hold on to this idea that I'm just here and maybe I'd want a career like it, you know, and just know that, and not all decisions come out this way, but that time will take care of itself. There may become more clarity on what you want, but it doesn't have to be an either or, at least in how we think about it. Obviously, you either are going to go back into a workforce or not, but when we can stop the dichotomizing, sometimes it just makes it an easier place to rest in.
But yeah, COVID did change my world. Like, I work mostly from home now, which I do enjoy. It brings different challenges with work, but I do enjoy it. You can work from anywhere in the world remotely, and and I still catch up with people from the AIS, people like Tony Pumpston, and
oh, good.
What
is she doing?
She's now at Invictus.
Oh, okay. So the para warrior program. Is that right?
She was at Hockey Australia, and I don't know if you saw the press, but she had a bit of a hard time there.
Dust up, yeah, I think
and
so.
She took it really hardly. Like, I was a bit worried about her for a while. Like, she was not in a good way.
No.
But you know, she's got really good support from her husband, and she had, you know, people she could talk to, and she seems to have come through it. She's still bitter, as I can understand, but she seems a lot better now. So
yeah, I mean, I still have minor PTSD from the way the AIS spit out its employees when it did the divestiture or whatever you want to call it. Our area got pressed into like informal mental health counseling because Peter Condi would put on the bottom of his slide. Were you there when that all happened, or had you?
No, I'd left before Peter started.
It was brutal for people who had a big investment in the AIS. Like I'd been there 7 years, but there are people there who just loved the AIS. And so when he would put on the bottom of his slides, if you're struggling, go see EAP, it became like the last thing people would do, because that's like the man is saying, go to EAP. So people were scrambling to figure out how to take care of themselves. And so our team of psychologists were, you know, seeing people who were devastated, and they were holding their cards close to their chest about whether they were going to give out redundancies or not. And that left people in a lot of uncertainty. So anyway, I can relate to Tony.
I'm good friends with Louise Burke. I see her once a month or so. She's in Melbourne now. So she's one of the people who was very...
we stayed in touch, and how she was treated was...
Yes.
I mean, you know, I'm 7 years, but she built a 30-year empire. And it was like summarily dismantled. So I could clearly have. So
that often happens in jobs, right? Like, I've invested in myself intensely in previous jobs, and then you leave, and sometimes, you know, it's usually because you're moving on to something else, but you leave and you're forgotten, and you sort of think, well, I did, you know, it's sometimes that's quite hard to sort of get your head around.
To reconcile, or, you know. And so anyway, I don't want to keep you, but it was just great to chat, and
nice to see you.
To talk much during the and I don't know what happened to my audio and all that, but anyway, take care. And if there's anything, you know, if you decide that maybe it's a good idea to invest in that way, you just let me know. And
thank you very much. Nice to see you. Bye.
Take care. See ya.
Bye.